Hey, Fix listeners. I want to take a minute to give you all an update on our DPO, Smile Now Dental Group. In case you haven't heard, we've been opening up locations all across the country for doctors just like yourselves. We started several offices this year to show proof of concept, and it's been off to the races ever since. So, if you're looking for an equitable partnership opportunity where you can have a profitable business that supports you doing full arch, I'd love to hear from you. We're looking to add several locations in the next year and want to offer the training and support necessary to make one of those yours. If you'd like to learn more, you can go ahead and hit me up on Instagram at Dr. Tyler J. Tolbert, or shoot me an email at tyler@smilenowdentalgroup.com and say hey. Now, without further ado, let's get back to the show.
My name is Dr. Tyler Tolbert.
And I'm Dr. Soren Poppy.
And you're listening to the Fix Podcast,
your source for all things implant dentistry.
Hello, and welcome back to the Fix Podcast. We're on for a very special episode that I have been trying to make happen for, probably 2 years now, approximately. But I'm here with Dr. Sean Lan, who's a honorable colleague of mine, but also a very close friend. We've worked together, had the pleasure of working in the same office before, and now we work on two diametrically opposed states of this country, but we are still very close, and we coordinate all the time. Most of the time that I'm reaching out, it's sometimes to check on him and how he's doing. Most of the time it's like, oh no, I'm in trouble and I don't know how to do soft tissue stuff, and is this idea crazy? And then Sean will come back to me and say, that's really ridiculous. I'm going to send you some articles, and I know you won't read them, but here's what you need to do. And so he'll send me a stepwise process on how to do like a graft. But no, seriously. So I want to welcome Dr. Sean Lan to the show. Thank you so much for coming on, my man.
Dude, thank you for having me, man. This is great. This has been in the making. But yeah, I'm super stoked to be on here and share what we got.
Yeah, for sure. So just to kind of give some context, I wanted to have Sean on, not just because he's my friend, but I truly think that he is one of the most studious and pedantic people that I know in dentistry without being, completely insufferable. And he has a very strong grasp on all the modern literature having to do with all things implantology, like we like at the Fix Podcast, be it soft tissue, hard tissue, implants. He's really the person that changed how I looked at full arch, really, because I was all about just getting torque, putting screws in bone, being able to immediately load things. That's what I thought was really the art of full arch. But what I've come to learn is that the subtle art is in the soft tissue, and that's something that Dr. Lan here, he was studying from the moment I met him. I met him about 2 years ago. He came to shadow at the office. He was coming, out of his Air Force program. This actually was more than 2 years ago, wasn't it? Yeah. And time flies. And, he was learning all the soft tissue stuff. And, at that time and even up to now, it was something that was maybe not at the forefront of my mind. It wasn't really part of my algorithm in figuring out full arch. I kind of assumed that soft tissue worked its way out. But as I've, gone through my practice, I've really learned to understand how important that is. And also augmentation as well. Like there is a place for that. And, if you do this long enough, you're going to run into issues where you kind of wish you could grow something back. Unfortunately, Sean knows a lot about that. But before we get into it, I do want to mention we did get to see each other at the 2026 Orca Symposium, which was fantastic. It was in Las Vegas. And, I don't know what you thought about it. I hope you can share some, but I thought it was fantastic. I was there for the first annual symposium, which I thought was fantastic as well. I thought it was, incredible to have so many big names on the stage, and to have all these full arch people in one room was really incredible. And, that's pretty much all I expected the second time around. But what I saw more was there was more talk about soft tissue augmentation. There was things for various skill levels. It all wasn't about showing off, a bunch of zygo cases. It was about transinus. It was about all kinds of other remote anchorage. It was about even getting into full arch. Athena Godarzi did something about, here's what you want to do if you want to get into full arch. Here's your roadmap to excellence, which I thought was fantastic. It wasn't just preaching to people that have been doing this a long time. And, a lot of people showed out. I think there were about 300 attendees. I was also able to meet a few of you guys in person, Fix fans out there, Alessandro Retis, Judson Murray, who I already knew prior, but it was the first time meeting him in person. And then George, he wanted me to say Politicus, but that's Americanized. He told me it's actually Politakis. So I am now saying his name correctly. I've said it on the show before, and I completely butchered it. And he told me very politely that I did that. And he was gracious enough to tell me how to say it in person. So, George, thank you very much for your patience with that. But yeah, so how did you enjoy the symposium?
Man, I loved it. Everything you said was great. My favorite part that I took away, and honestly, the main reason I went was, obviously the content's great, but we consume that like day in, day out. But it was really cool just meeting a bunch of these surgeons that I've been talking to like some of them for like 3 years, even other
Yeah.
colleagues and dentists trying to get into it. And just like on Instagram. And that's like kind of what brought me back. Like, social media, we're sitting there scrolling, everyone's, no one's immune to that. And so whenever I catch myself, I'm like, man, why am I even using this? But man, moments like that is when I was like, this is exactly why, as with anything, if used with intention, right? Like it's a beautiful thing. I learned so much, from talking and posting my cases, and, great surgeons like, Dr. Gonzalez, or Thomas Kaczynski, they'll just comment on my post and like, hey, nice, man, but here's what I would do. Like, and just give me little, things that'll make me, that just made me better, so, and also shout out to those guys for taking the time to help young surgeons like us, get better. And hopefully we can do the same, for the next group.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I've experienced that phenomenon as well. I share a case, and I'm feeling really high and mighty about it. And I'm like, oh man, my case looks so sick, and I'm getting likes and comments and fire emojis, and then Simon will comment and be like, call me. And this has happened. We've had to sort this out before. He's had to teach me some lessons about how I do full arch, which of course is welcome, and it's only benefited me substantially in my cases. But no, totally. I mean, being able to receive that kind of feedback is so important, and it's so. It really means a lot that people who have extremely busy schedules take the time out of their day to coach people on techniques and make your cases better. And that's what it's all about. Like, it's a very competitive world that we live in full arch. If you're, either if you're an associate in an office, if you're starting your own office like you are, Sean, I mean, how competitive it is out there. And, it can lend itself to a scarcity based mentality. But I think at the root of it all, we have to realize that there's a lot of people doing full arch, but there's not a lot of people doing it really, really well. And the people who do it really well, and they research and they associate with one another and they share knowledge and they try to empower others, those are the people that I think will win out, long term, not just, economically or competitively, but I just mean, to have clinical success in full arch requires attention to detail, and it requires some humility and the ability to be open-minded and learn new things as you go along, because it's an extremely challenging thing to do. And it only gets worse if you're trying to do it in a silo. So really appreciate Orca for putting that together, bringing together the best full arch surgeons literally in the world. I think they were represented, 30 countries were represented there. That's insane. I think there were more people from out of the country than in the country. It was ridiculous. So that was a really cool thing to be a part of. And, I'll certainly be there next year, and I'll have some more hats to give out. We got a fixed podcast hat in the background on your feed, which I certainly appreciate. Sean went with the cream. That is my personal favorite.
Up with the skulls.
Yeah, exactly. Up there with the skulls. That's fantastic. But yes, that's much ado about things other than you. So, Sean, if you would be so kind, can you kind of just share with us, your journey, from dental school, getting into residency? How did you find that implants was your thing? How did you go about pursuing that? And what did you do through residency and coming out of it to sort of lead to where you are today? And then kind of catch us up with what's going on.
Yeah. So dental school got me into dental school, even, which I thought I wanted to be an orthodontist. And pretty quickly I found out that's what I don't want to do. I kind of was just going through my way and through the specialties, first year, and like came across oral surgery, which is the one that spoke to me most. And so I just started hanging out with them throughout school. Every free moment I got, I was in their clinic. Third year, I started taking more calls with them, that kind of stuff, things that, a lot of the listeners probably have done. But that was my main interest, was oral maxillofacial surgery. And that's what I thought I wanted to do right out of dental school. After dental school, I had a 3-year contract with the Air Force. And so I started that, and the first year was a 1-year AGD residency. And in that residency is kind of where I, still I was full steam ahead. I'm going to apply for take my CBSE, apply for program as soon as I get out. And because I decided I wanted to do a program outside of the Air Force. Air Force has great programs, just they only have the 4-year, and I thought I wanted to do the 6. So I was preparing for that, and then, man, I don't know what it was. I was sitting there and I was just thinking, I was like, man, like how this is really stressful, and I had like sat back and thought of my life and like, hey, like how much additional happiness will doing maxillofacial surgery bring me? And I was like, it certainly would bring me additional happiness, but I started seeing, a lot of GPs and even, periodontists and other colleagues do a lot of great dental alveolar surgery and implants on Instagram. And also through Instagram, I've met other people, that have been doing really high quality work that I thought, oh, man, you have to be a specialist to do this. And it just got me thinking, like, man, maybe this path could be possible, but I still want to do it the right way. If it takes me to specialize, I'll specialize. In residency, I had really supportive attendings. They were all specialists in their own right. So my endo attending was an endodontist. My perio was a periodontist, oral surgeon. We had two of them. Prosthodontist was a prosthodontist. So, and they were all it was almost like they were just trying to compete to see who they can, convince to join their specialty after, which is great, because in the Air Force, you're sent to a base and it's just GPs. Unless it's a big enough base, they don't have specialists there. So they really wanted, even if you wanted to stay GP, they really wanted you to know how to do all this. Because if you refer, it might be like a 2-hour trip for the airman that's there. So they really wanted you to do a lot. And if you wanted to. And so but I think in a very responsible way. And so this kind of was like the formation of how I think and how I learn. My periodontist and oral surgeon, they sat us down intro week and they're like, listen, you guys can graduate here just doing SRPs and simple extractions, or you can graduate here having done over 50 IV sedations, full bone impacted, thirds, osseous perio surgery, some soft tissue. It's not heavy on soft tissues, it's only a year program, but they're like, you can do it as long as you prove it to us that you're in it, and you can put in the work. And so what that meant was literally, like, for example, for my periodontist, he said, okay, if you have a patient that needs, for example, periosseous surgery, and that's something you want to do, prove to me that you can, get 70% of the way, and I'll take you the rest of the 30%. And so we go read textbooks, we can ask the questions that he would answer is, hey, what kind of papers do you suggest? Or like, what authors would you suggest? And he would give us those names and we would go read them. And then we had 30 minutes, we had a scheduled meeting with him, had 30 minutes, sit down, talk through the case, talk about the literature we read. And if we made him happy, he would take us the rest away and let us do it. And so I think that was a really formative way to teaching me how I teach myself nowadays, And so I just kept doing that over and over and over. And when I graduated, man, I had so much confidence, not only in what I was doing, but in myself to teach me to be able to learn these things, obviously with guidance, but, to be able to learn these kind of procedures and be able to trust myself to critically think. And so that was the first, I would say, the most important thing that I developed in residency that helped me on my path. Now, kind of in the next 2 years afterwards, and this is kind of every path to doing implants in Florence is different. But I think you said on, very early podcast episode is on the previous podcast that you had. But you said, you were talking with Soren and you guys were just talking about like the different things that you need. You can look at different flavors, but what you need is, obviously didactic knowledge, right? You know what you're doing, the anatomy. 2, you need solid surgical fundamentals, right? Like Soren took out thousands of teeth in dental school, right? Because he was with the oral surgeons. Didn't place implants, but flapped a ton, took out a lot of teeth, very comfortable cutting bone, sectioning teeth, all that. And then 3, you got to do the damn thing, right? You have to do it. So finding an environment that allows you to do the thing that you're doing. And so didactic part, obviously, that was kind of what that the first arm is what I developed in residency. And then over the next 2 years in the Air Force, when I was working at a clinic, I had a lot of time. So that's when I really, really started to dive into literature, textbooks. We had so many books come out in 2017, like Urban's book, Pico's book, Zero Bone Loss Concepts, all those. I read them all, and a lot of other papers after that too. Just kind of preparing because I was like, this is what I want to do when I get out. And so I was preparing myself didactically, still talking to my attendings for that guided learning component, right? Not just out here on my own, completely. If I had a concept that I had trouble understanding, I would text them and have a call with them and they would, guide me through. And then 2, I was also developing that second arm, right? This developing surgical fundamentals. All I was doing at any third that was coming through the clinic, any kind of surgery, biopsy or whatever, benign, obviously, I would try to do, within my comfort level and in my scope. And so building very good fundamentals, flapping, sectioning teeth, all that. And then so that at the end, which is kind of where our paths crossed, was 3, having the environment, right? Now I had this environment where it was a full arch clinic. I got to watch, a very adept surgeon like yourself perform the surgery that I had been reading about for over 2 years. And it just all clicked, and I still remember the first day when you're like, all right, you ready? And I was like, yeah, man, like, let's do it. And it was such an exciting day, man. Cause it's like, this is the culmination of like 2 years of just, this is all I was thinking about. And then you get to do it. And then that's all we did, I think we were there for like 2.5 months together.
Yeah. Well, I think something that, is so remarkable about your development, I think it's a tale of 2 different paths, right? Like for me, I went straight out of dental school into doing full arch. And, truth be told, I mean, I feel confident saying now I had, very inadequate experience to be doing what I was doing. That's just the reality of it. I know that now in retrospect. At the time, you tell yourself what you need to get through it, right? Because I knew it's what I wanted to do, and I had done some research. Like I'd read a lot of books and listened to a lot of podcasts and done a ton of shadowing. But I was also a COVID grad, and I pulled like 40 teeth. So there's a lot of learning on the fly, and I had tutelage and I had guidance and I had backup. And that was important. And, I just grinded my way through, literally and figuratively, a lot of arches and learned a lot of hard lessons very quickly. And it was particularly stressful. And I learned so many lessons in retrospect. And I don't know if that's really the preferred way to do it. And I kind of look at what my progression was like and how my cases were looking through, say, my first year, second year, and what that progress was like and all the things that kind of happened there. And as I was running into complications and getting into hot water with certain cases, it didn't go the way that I thought they would. That's when I would go back to the books, go back to the literature, go back to textbooks and try and relearn a lot of these things and question, okay, I thought that this would be good enough, but it obviously wasn't. What do I need to kind of supplement? And I would kind of, as I went along, I was going back to try to learn those fundamentals better, right? And I'd go to courses and people would teach me how to properly flap. They teach me how to properly extract a tooth, and I'd learn everything going back to square one, even though I was already full steam with full arch. I think it's very seductive to go out and do this as soon as someone gives you a job. And maybe there's some virtue to that. Maybe there's some grit there. I don't know. But in your case, there was a whole lot of preamble where you were in residency and you were learning literature like the back of your hand and having to face the scrutiny of specialists and having to prove that you had a right to be doing what you were doing. And while it took you longer to get to the actual opportunity of getting to do the work, you took off like a bottle rocket. From your first case to when you were placing pterygoids to when you were doing, advanced regenerative surgery, this was all happening in the period of like 6 months to a year. I watched the entirety of my full arch progression that took like 2.5 years up to that point get condensed into like 6 months because you already knew everything you needed to know. And it was just about getting that opportunity. Sorry, I got my fixed logo going absolutely bonkers behind me. Sorry. If you're watching the video, you're getting quite a light show right now. Yeah. I think that it's a really good demonstration of this kind of slingshot effect that happens when you're prioritizing the training first before you get the opportunity. And while, economically, you can toss up opportunity costs and talk about that, whatever. Like just throw that out for just a second. And I think when you look at the body of work that you've done since you've been able to actually do all these things you've been studying to do, your cases are fantastic. They're beautiful. They're complete. They're harmonious and hard and soft tissue. They have the right arrangements. Your cases got to the point of being, functionally, prosthetically, aesthetically, everything being immaculate a lot quicker than I could. Hell, I'm still trying to get there, right? And so I think that, you make a very strong case for being intentional about the training first, making sure you know all these things first and really knowing the literature, because once you've already gotten out and you start doing these things, it's really hard to learn new stuff. I mean, there are so many things I've been wanting to implement in my practice because I know that they would make my practice better. But like, there's this hump of having to learn it first. And that's a really difficult thing to do when you're already in the grind of it all. And so my progression as a full arch surgeon has really leveled off. I mean, I think it still continues to, get better over time. But that growth is not nearly as exponential as yours was when you first started. So I think you make a very good case for putting that training first, even though economically sometimes that may not look as advantageous as just going out and working in some full arch clinic as soon as you're out of school. But there's pros and cons to both. And I think there's a very strong argument for going about it the way you did.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there's different ways. There's no one way better than the other. You did. I wouldn't discount yourself at all, too, because I know you did. You were even taking implant CE in dental school, and that's something I didn't even think about.
I think I took as much in dental school as I have since. That's how time changes you, and how much work holds you back from getting more training. But yeah, please.
Right. Right. No, but I think the similarities between both their paths is that we're always constantly reevaluating cases, right? Like you can do, we've seen it, right? Both were mentors for a large full arch DSO, and we've seen everything, right? We've seen people, placed 1,000 implants as a GP. Cool. All right. And then you start seeing some of the cases, you're like, oh, I can kind of see the complication rate for those 1,000 was probably a lot higher than the literature states.
You get a lot of reps when you're redoing your own stuff all the time.
You can do the same thing wrong 1,000 times,
Right.
And it's not to say that we're doing it completely right, but I think to say the difference. I mean, the similarities that we have is that we're constantly reevaluating our work, seeing what we can do better, see what we can tweak in order to have better outcomes. And at the end of the day, we're not trying. There's no way to avoid complications. I certainly have them, and I actually learn the most from them. But it's about trying to minimize them, and just accepting if you're doing surgery, you're going to have them, and that's okay.
Yeah. For sure. So going back to, the story of you. So you've gotten your first full arch under your belt. You had that experience. What does the next 6 months to a year look like? Kind of catch us up to where you are.
You mean from the start point?
Yeah. Like from when we did your first arch together and then forward.
Yeah. So we had our time together, and then started working on my own as well. And then that was a real another big moment, because it was also my first time as a dentist practicing myself, because in the military we had 5 other dentists in the building, and then I went to 2, just me and you, and then now it's just me. So
a very short time.
Yeah, right. And it's not just talking like,
well.
Man, how'd you manage the cord on this crown prep? It was full arch. So not a lot of people that you could talk to, but of course, that's where kind of Instagram and meeting people there and having meeting other mentors on there kind of came into play a lot. And continuing to read, continuing to kind of, and that's kind of where it gets hard, right? Because now you're running a practice, and you have a little less time for that. But if you have cases that come up that you're like, crap, it requires this procedure, this technique, transsinus or whatever, I better read up on it and make sure. And that's kind of like the opportunity that you have to kind of make in your daily life to read, it's when you're forced to have to do it. Right. The next kind of 6 months was just that. In fact, we had talked about it before, but was looking at my case log because I keep a case log for every single case I do.
This thing is amazing, by the way. And if you'd be gracious enough to share it, I think it would be a really awesome resource for people. But this thing is insane.
Put a link up or put my email up, and I can send it to people. But the most important thing is, and it tracks everything. But the most important thing I always tell people is, hey, track your failures first of all. And I always try to write down the comorbidities of the patient, blah, blah, blah. But it's really just so you can run back. It's just like watching the tape back on on football. Everyone sits down, they watch the debrief. I do debriefs on surgery, not as much anymore, right? Because at a certain point, it just becomes more and more routine. But every time I push the limit or try a new technique or something, I sit down and write my review of how things went, how things could have gotten better. and then that way I have something solid there and I don't forget it, right? Like, it sounds bad, but at a certain point, like it's hard to remember what you did yesterday, you know.
You
You got
bet.
things
Yeah.
going on in
Can
the
be
clinic.
gone.
So yeah, it's just a lot of that, just continuing to grow and learning how to trust in myself and trust in this process that I've invested in, and growing from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, we both had similar experiences in being mentors for tons of clinicians around the country. We've flown around, helped people out with cases. We've gone and done revision cases, things like that. What would you say, having seen and helped so many people in their full arch development, what would you say that most full arch clinicians are kind of missing in their toolkit?
Yeah, so I think a lot, and especially a lot of questions I get too, is just like, man, like, buckle plate fractured, or like this happened, like what do I do? And for me, and I'll share one of my own complications actually.
Sure.
So I'll never forget it because I still remember, like I can still see it how it happened. It was a very tight maxilla. It was a palatal approach on the posterior implants. I think, the anterior implants were standard, but it was very tight. Without a nasal palatine, it would have had like 12 millimeters of AP spread, but with a nasal palatine, it would have been 15, which that 3 millimeter increase is definitely worth it. Like Pedro Rodriguez was talking about, reduce that anterior cantilever. I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to place that NP and squeeze it in, but it's gonna give her, avoid zygos at least for the time being. Placed the posteriors, went in great, placed the anteriors, and then I was like, all right, like let's do the bones a little soft, got like 30, 40, even with Versa and undersizing. But it was looking like I could load all the implants, and I was like, all right, I got to undersize this one, which is when I learned in the anterior maxilla, or places with highly cortical bone and not a lot of trabecular bone. Probably shouldn't undersize.
It doesn't stretch very much.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't stretch very much because it's cortical.
Yeah.
And sunk the implant, and I was like, hell yeah, it's going great. It feels great. It's grabbing on. And then I just saw the ANS, the anterior nasal spine, kind of fracture, start to fracture. And I immediately stopped. Heart sank. And I was like, Jesus, like, I don't have any microplates. Like, what do I do? I backed it out, and I was just sitting there, and I was like, man, like, gathered myself, took a couple breaths, and I was like, all right, wait, this is like essentially like unintentional Corey plate, right? Or unintentional ridge split. Like, I know how to graph. And I know how to do this. So I, hydrated some grafted PRF, some allograft, and then I packed it around that site. I could still load the case because I had 4 perfectly good implants, and I grafted the anterior maxilla. Used stabilizing sutures and other techniques to get it really tight, like a sausage technique, and I let it heal, and it healed great. 4 months later, placed an NP implant, this time prepping a little bit bigger. Didn't get great torque, which I was not expecting great torque, but after 3 months, uncovered it, loaded it, and she's doing great.
Perfect.
So that's just a complication that can happen to anyone. But because I had these other skills, not just placing implants, the hard and soft tissue skills, that I was able to, be able to manage that confidently after the fact of, having that first, moment of, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely want us, and we'll kind of do this in a second here, because I think it's a topic all in of its own, but I want us to get into the regenerative portion of things, because, when I was first coming up into full arch, it was very anti-regenerative, right? Like, we were moving away from sinus lifts. We were moving away from grafting in general. In fact, some of my early mentors were teaching me how to do full arch. They wouldn't even like graft sockets. I mean, they would just do the case, place implants, and you're like, oh, it's going to fill in. You got, as long as it's a 4-wall defect, don't worry about it, right? It was just like, place the implant, immediately load it. It always works out. Fix is just magical like that. You don't have to think about all these little intricacies of regenerative dentistry. But, as I've gone along, I really wish I had, really invested in that a lot earlier and taken on some of those cases and done more regenerative, because, it's a great fallback for when moments like that happen, because they are going to happen. When you're trying to do everything graftless and fixed immediate load and all that, but if something falls apart, and just about anything you can out fracture this or that, you need to learn how to rebuild. And also there's definitely virtue in, even if the case does go to plan, there are things that you can do in the case to set yourself up should anything go wrong, so that you have some more real estate later. We can kind of get into open approach transsinus. We can get into sinus lifting. There's a lot of little things that we can do even with our fixed full arch cases that go to plan, just to set them up even better for when things go wrong. But yeah, so let's continue on a little bit. So some things that dentists are missing in their toolkit. So they're we got to make sure we have the augmentation there. Where are some other places where we're a lot of people are falling short when they get into full arch?
Yeah, and I'm really glad you asked this question, because I think we get so focused on the clinical, and obviously that's at the core of what we do every day. But yeah, that clinical skills, I think expanding the clinical set is always something that you can do. But I think taking a bigger step back and looking at what you can do to improve your full arch game in general is fitness, talking about personal development, and then also just thinking more like a doctor and not technician. Putting 4 screws in bone is like the easiest part of the entire process. Like at a certain point, you'll hear any person doing this procedure all the time. At a certain point, that's the easiest part. But yeah, fitness, it's really taxing on the body. I think you and I both, we're both proponents of regular physical, regimented, resistance training. Now, you don't have to go to the gym 5 times a week. And it's actually a video idea I want to get out too. But as long as you're doing stuff that you that strengthens your back, strengthens your neck, and especially your core, doing a lot of core exercises, I think it really sets your body up to be resilient. Right. And another thing I do too is just try to be ergonomic. I sit for all my surgeries. I picked that up from Dr. Juan Gonzalez. I couldn't believe it when I first heard it, because all the surgeons, you want to stand, you got to stand to be a surgeon, but luckily the type of surgery we do, you can sit, and I saw this guy, man, he's slinging quad zygos and teres sitting down. Like, why can't I do it? And another thing he loves to do is he's just wearing like a $40 headlamp. You don't need a $3,000 expensive. It's nice to have. I'm not saying you don't need, but I'm like, man, this guy, if he can do it sitting down, I can do it sitting down for sure. And that's been a huge benefit. But another thing is just like being like, once you learn how to lift, right, you learn how to breathe properly. And what I mean by that is we learn how to expand, breathe, and really increase that intra-abdominal pressure. So it's like breathing into your belly, flexing, like literally flexing your abs like you're about to get punched. And I'll do that if I have to bend, and because inevitably we're going to have to bend over just to see something, or I always just consciously get a sip of air, go in, and it sounds silly, but man, I don't feel my back ever. I don't, the only times I ever feel my back nowadays is when I go to mentor and I have to do it standing, because most offices are set up standing, or if I'm at Colorado Surgical, it's all standing. And I'll bring my resistance, training belt, with me that day. But yeah, some days towards the end of the day, I'll feel pretty sore because I'm not used to standing, but because we regularly work out, our bodies are just used to that. And the next day I feel fine. I never have any issues, so I think, investing time into CE is great, but also investing time in the fitness is just as important.
No, I think you make a great point there. And two, I mean, I've been, lifting for a long time, since long before I was a dentist. But I used to have a lot more back pain than I do now. And I think that, lifting is great, but just not just like any kind of lifting, really focusing on core stuff, looking at your own posture. I think that's a really important thing, and figuring out where your issues are. I went to a physical therapist, and they're like, yeah, you're all kinds of screwed up. Like, first of all, you're way shorter than you should be. You got forward head posture. You've got, weak core, over, tightened back. You got, he's just like running through me, right? Like,
this is what we do to patients.
Yeah. Exactly. It's just turned around on me, and I'm like, good Lord, I'm like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Like, this is insane. and you learn like the types of exercises and where you need to strengthen yourself. Like if you have, rounded shoulders, your pecs are too tight, right? And you have a weak upper back. So you need to kind of reverse that a little bit, work on your flexibility, get those shoulders rolled back, right? Get your chin, do some chin tucks and things like that. Learn how to correct the posture and use muscles to reinforce that. And it's changed a lot. Like I definitely still have back pain because I still stand for surgery. And after a double, you bet, like my dogs are barking, but it's not as bad as it used to be. I mean, there was definitely a time actually through dental school where, I questioned if it was even a viable career for me, because there would just be some days where it was so painful that I'm like popping ibuprofen to get through the day. And I'm like, this probably isn't sustainable. I'm not even working yet. So it's extremely important, early on to form those habits, and, what you're doing in the very beginning, really shapes how you do it for years and years. So like, if you can go ahead and start sitting for surgery, go ahead and start, using both hands, learning to, give one or the other a break. That's one thing that I am glad I did kind of early on, is like I learned to use both hands, so that, because I did notice like after like several hours of surgery, like I would start to cramp up and like I would kind of lose dexterity, and I was like really having to grit my teeth through surgery. But now I can switch hands and stuff. So like all of the things that you kind of start doing, even when they're really uncomfortable, will prevent you from getting a whole lot more uncomfortable later. I think that's a great point. I'm glad you bring that up.
Yeah, 100%. And then, so the next point is, personal development. I think, again, the surgery is the easiest part. People, dealing with people, communicating with people is always the hardest part. So I think, when it comes to your team, when it comes to your patients, that, managing stress is a high stress environment. You're in one of these kind of offices, I think it's really the better person that we are, the better leader we can become as well.
Yeah.
So I think that helps a lot of that's another thing that we, had to field questions for all the time for mentees, is like, hey, like I got this little office drama going on. Like, how do I, or this patient said this, how do I deal with this? And, what really helps with that is just reading personal development books, reading leadership books, and getting these other ideas from great leaders, great entrepreneurs that have dealt with all these issues,
Yeah.
And it helps day to day. It just gives you more ideas in how to handle these kinds of situations. So I think that's another important point to get. I'm curious, like, because I know you read it and you're into this kind of stuff too. Like, what are some like your favorite podcasts, or like maybe a book you read recently in this kind of subject area?
I mean, the ones I come back to, ones that people talk about a lot, right? So like how to win friends and influence people is a huge one. It kind of helps you learn how to, talk to people and, gain influence, right? Like how to make a better impression, how to be impactful in a conversation, how to, really empathize with the person and connect with them. I think that comes up all the time when I'm doing, a consult, or, if a patient's having a hard time or they're upset about something. Just being able to, interact with them in a positive way and have them come away, feeling better than they went into the conversation is really powerful. It's also important for networking and things like that. There's a lot of entrepreneurial reasons. Other than that, I would say, crucial conversations is a really, really big one. I think most of the things that give me anxiety on a day-to-day basis really would be solved by just having uncomfortable conversations more often, confronting problems while they're small, before they get bigger. And when I look back at, issues I've had either with my team or with patients, what have you, a lot of times there were opportunities to correct those things early had I just been willing to have an uncomfortable conversation with the person, and kind of nip it in the bud before, it got a little bit out of hand. If you wait until you don't really have a choice but to confront it anymore, you have a much bigger problem on your hand that really could have been solved pretty strategically. Other than that, I just had it in my mind. Shoot. Was it? Oh, the courage to be disliked. I think that's the one there.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
That's a really powerful one. So it tacks on to, I mean, there's a lot of topics in there, some of them relevant to what we're talking about, some of them not so much. But one of them is learning to not filter what you say through the lens of wanting to be liked by other people, right? It's, I think both of us deal with a people-pleasing nature, and that can really be to a detriment. I saw so many other doctors who I perceive to be, very successful, who you would learn, some people regard them as being, frankly, assholes, right? But they're successful and they have teams that stick with them and are with them. And sometimes I would ask myself, I'm like, I'm a really nice guy. Like I'm a really nice guy, and I always say nice things. I'm never degrading. I never insult anybody, but I have turnover. Like I have these issues. Like I have all these problems. But then when I read that book and I started having conversations and being willing to say things to people regardless of how they would receive it. There's a certain way to deliver things, of course, but like letting go of any fear of judgment or, consideration that I'm a dick or whatever that may be, just learning how to talk straight to people gained me so much more respect in my life. And it led to stronger relationships. Like even if what I said wasn't exactly what I didn't feel comfortable saying it because I felt like it was going to make me look a certain way. It would gain respect, with my team. It gains respect with patients. Like just being able to talk straight to people, saying what needs to be said, thinking more about what needs to be said in that moment than how it's going to be received or how people are going to think about you when you say it. It's a really, really powerful thing. And it lets you think more objectively about like, okay, what does a good doctor do in this situation? What does a good business owner do in this situation? And then you just do that thing. And then whatever happens, whatever gets thrown your way, be that as it may, if as long as you have your own strong sense of self, it doesn't, those kinds of things, they bounce off you a lot easier, and you end up with a lot less problems that way. So I think those three have been very formative for me. But other than that, there's podcasts, of course. I like Alex Hormozy. I like a lot of those like personal development, podcasts. And I think just exposing yourself to that. I really like Modern Wisdom. That's a big one. Chris Williams. I love that guy.
Yeah.
He's great. And it's just like exposing yourself to people like that, not getting like too far deep into the manosphere or whatever, but just engaging with people who, or podcasts or whatever, that just talk about how to interact with others and have positive relationships. It's just a healthy thing. It's better than just doom scrolling all the time. Be good to your brain and try to learn as much as you can from people who are trying to do similar things, either in your field or another. I think it's beneficial.
I like that the theme of the last book, because it's just like it becomes a us versus the problem thing. It's just like in relationships, right? Like how to have conversation with your significant other, like, hey, it's us versus the problem, not me versus you. And I think when we have this kind of conversations, it does build that opportunity to get closer. I think one other book that kind of inadvertently helped me, and this is kind of, I started reading this book just for my personal growth, but it's called The Anger Trap. And it's a book that helps you. I think I told you about this one before.
You have told me, but
yeah,
I like hearing it. Yeah.
It unexpectedly helped me, and it's a daily practice too. Anger, right? Everyone's got it. It doesn't mean like you. When you think of anger, you think like the big dude, red in the face, like yelling, but it manifests in a different way. You can be the quiet type of anger, like we can be, or, you might be the person that like, oh man, like I wish I said something, but I didn't. Now you're feeling frustrated. That's also anger. I think reading that book really gave me insight into how, like, the science of anger, how it works. And, through the lens of a professional that has dealt with thousands of clients with these issues. And after reading it, it really started helping me see, like, even in patients, like mad patients, right? Like, talk about the most difficult things in your day. It's not the double that you just had today. It's pissed off patient, that for some reason, so some kind of misunderstanding, right? Or the team member that has some kind of understanding. And so people, once you start recognizing anger, you can kind of be, okay, this is not a personal thing. This is just a frustration that they're dealing with. And because I know about this, and it's just like how to win friends and influence people. It's not to manipulate people at all. It's just to do that guiding it's almost like you're moderating the conversation, because who else is going to moderate it, right? You're not going to bring in a moderator and to arbitrate that conversation. Right? Someone has to be the bigger person, right? And again, it's not a me versus you. It's hey, how do we talk to this problem, and how do we reach a solution that we're both like, all right, I agree with this,
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And you touched on it. Like, all this really comes back to patient relations. And like, when you talk about the things that stress you out in full arch over time, like your first year, 2 years, like you're going to be stressed out about cases. Of course, like you're just going to be pouring yourself through CBCTs and, thinking through surgeries every single step. And like, you might lay awake at night and thinking about this case or something you haven't done before, something you want to try, or you're worried that something might go wrong. That does like generally go away. I mean, as long as you're kind of pushing a little bit of discomfort, like you'll think about these things, but over time you do gain confidence to where you deal with enough things that don't go your way, and you deal with them successfully, and you realize that, okay, I generally know how to, select my cases. I know how to not get way in over my head. And if things don't go wrong or things don't go my way, like I've got plan A, I've got plan B, I got plan C. Things are going to be fine. And I've gotten to a point where I really do not stress about surgery anymore. I usually will do, every couple of weeks, I'll go through all the cases I've got coming up. I'll plan them, and I look through pictures. I plan the case. I tell my assistants, what we need for the surgery. And then I generally don't think about them until literally the morning of. I walk in, I'm like, okay, what are we doing today? And I look over it. I look over my notes and I'm good to go. It all happens in the operatory and then it's over. And it really is like that. But what, bothers me on a daily basis is these patient interactions or something that may have not gone ideally with the team, or maybe you didn't handle something well. And I don't think that's ever going to change. I think that is that's business. That's the art of people. That is some of the hardest things to do. And it really ends up being what makes or breaks you. you think it's your surgical skill and it's truly not. Of course that's important. Of course we're here to talk about that. But man, you just, and I hear it all the time. I know, the best educators and the best clinicians I know, they can still tell me about these problem patients. They know their names. They'll name them and say, yeah, person, I was at a 3-on-6 course recently, back in, I guess it was actually September. This has been some time. And I remember Dr. Logan Locke, he's one of the primary doctors there and he teaches 3-on-6 and he's a brilliant clinician, really, really fantastic. And, he had this one patient he mentioned, I think it was 3 or 4 times, throughout the course. He's like, yep, that's her, he was present in his mind. He was getting texts about it, and he's he's one of the best, FP1 people in the country for sure. And, surgical stuff's going to happen all the time, but it's just how you deal with people. And that's, it's something that you can always work on and it will always there's just few things that are going to make your life easier than just learning how to deal with, sometimes difficult people.